Hello, you wonderful people. So for today's video, I want to talk about specifically kind of like the genre of Groundhog Day episodes. Now what I mean by that, obviously when I'm referencing Groundhog Day, I mean referencing the Bill Murray movie. But nevertheless, basically the whole concept of it is like, oh, you're stuck in a time loop. Like, everyone knows that. Like, it's funny, I know that, but it's like, I don't think I've ever seen that movie all the way through, and I just think it's interesting. But the whole concept of time loops actually gets used quite a bit in TV shows, and it's not something until recently I was like, that's actually kind of become like a genre. It's kind of like a staple in certain like either supernatural or like science fictional shows where that plays an angle. To the point like I've seen it pop up enough that I'm kind of like, I wonder is it something that people get tired of? I'm always interested to see like a time loop episodes. I love them. I get excited when someone's like, oh, this is so cool, because I always love the concept of someone kind of fiddling around and like having fun with it. Obviously you had the Groundhog's Day formula of like, oh, you enjoyed it first, but eventually you get stuck in it so long that you get sick and tired of it. So it's just kind of an interesting genre of episodes. Like I said, it's just an interesting concept, and I feel like it can easily be thrown into a series. It's just kind of like a one-off episode, and I always like that. So kind of an added aspect to this video, I want to, you know, kind of discuss some of my favorite ones that I've come across the different TV shows I've watched. One is actually in the TV show Haven. Basically, you know, obviously in Haven people have abilities and stuff like that. They're called the Troubles. Audrey gets stuck in a time loop where basically everyone thinks it's Christmas, but in actuality she's constantly having to be like, no, it's literally July. Why do people think it's Christmas? But everyone's thinking like, oh man, she's turning into a Scrooge because she's not in the Christmas spirit. And so it turns into a situation of slowly, every time the day repeats, basically more and more people from Haven disappear, literally to the point like at the end of the episode it was only her and another character left. It was literally only like 2 people left. It was just kind of an interesting route to it. It's actually kind of a interesting reason why the Trouble activated, like, because obviously it usually takes certain things, triggers, to activate someone's Trouble, and I think I remember the circumstances around it, but just in case anyone ever comes across that particular episode, I won't spoil it. Another one would be kind of also actually on the same channel that Haven was airing on, Sci-Fi, is the TV show Eureka, where Jack was basically stuck in a time loop too. Interestingly enough, it was like Nathan and Allison's wedding day, which is kind of, in retrospect, it's kind of like, that's kind of the worst day to kind of have to be stuck in a time loop, because obviously like Jack has his feelings for Allison and stuff, and it's just a kind of a complicated situation. I think this is back in season 1, might have been season 2, I don't remember, it's been a while. Obviously that whole conversation of like, oh, once again, we're in a time loop, no one really believes him, but he gets help here and there from people who try to help. Especially, it's interesting in Jack's case, because for Jack it's like, oh yeah, like he's kind of the quote-unquote idiot of the town. Like, he's in a town full of scientists, so obviously people are just gonna think he's a little crazy. He's like, oh, you must be stressing or worried about that, you know. So there's that. I think probably out of anyone on this list, potentially, to my recollection, I think that probably has like the saddest resolution. I won't go into it once again for spoiler reasons, but it's just kind of like, does not necessarily end on a happy note. It's kind of like, actually like, oh, that's super sad, you know, because time loops, it's like, oh, we broke it, and you know, you learn some valuable lesson out of it. It's like, no, like that was more so like an experiment or something went wrong. I mean, it's Eureka, so that's kind of like the synopsis. That's the entire plot to the show. It's like scientists' experiments go wrong and cause a problem in town. So what also makes Jack's situation interesting too is because of the whole time loop situation, he was affected too. Not just like, was he kind of living the day over and over again. Like, basically, if I remember correctly, it eventually started taking its toll on his body, that the more and more he went back through a time loop, the more injured his body was. So it was actually killing him physically to kind of constantly being sent back in time. I think there was even points where it's like, if he got hurt in a previous time loop, that it would like some of his wounds, like if he cut himself shaving, I think was one particular case, he came back in the time loop with that, you know. So like I said, I could be remembering that wrong. Next one is Dark Matter. In season 3, the most, well, what is I guess considered the final season, there was an time loop that 3, aka Marcus, got stuck in. Can't remember it's not been that long, but I'm kind of blanking on the exact circumstances by it. I think it was a device that caused the time loop. But basically, his particular situation is every time he went to sleep, the day would automatically, if he got knocked out or went to sleep, he'd automatically wake up. And he's trying to explain everything like your typical Groundhog's Day thing. What his situation was interesting too is because he wasn't the only one that ends up getting affected. later on someone else kind of gets dragged into it as well, which I thought was kind of fascinating, because usually it's kind of like a solo thing of like you have to do this by yourself type of thing. You have to convince all the other people around you by yourself, but it's like no, someone else got dragged into it with him. So that's kind of what made the dark matter one so unique. Because what's funny too is dark matter takes place in the future, so you can't even really reference, like at the very least the other two like tend to be shows where it's like they're set in modern day, so it's like you can make the reference to Groundhog's Day, but like in dark matter it's like how do you reference that in the show, because it's like that's not really something that they would know of, because it takes place in space. They're on a ship in the distant future, so it's like that situation just kind of like you just have to kind of describe it as a time loop. The next one is the most recent example of it, and that is the show Legends of Tomorrow, which obviously it fits very nicely with Legends of Tomorrow because it's a time travel show. You know, you have Zari being caught in a time loop. Obviously it's meant to be like, hers is more of the traditional like, oh, it's supposed to teach you a lesson type of thing. And I do love her way of explaining, like having to explain it, like, because it kind of like the dark matter angle of like Zari's from the future, so she doesn't know the reference of Groundhog's Day, but she talks to Nate, which Nate explains it as Groundhog's Day. But when she goes back in the time loop and she tried to explain that to Nate, she never got the title right. But like it's kind of, I like her situation nicely because it was kind of like a, oh man, like he believes her and helps her, but obviously Nate kind of gets caught up in his own thing. Like it's a very fun episode. Obviously it's kind of interesting because it's like what ends up restarting your time loop over and over is the ship explodes. That's what kind of sets everything in motion with this whole time loop. So her situation is she's very much on a timer because it's like we got a limited amount of time before the ship explodes, so she's trying to figure out what the cause of it is. Then obviously she takes time to learn more about her crewmates. Like I said, hers is more of like a learning experience, and to me, I think amongst anything on this list, it has like a very nice twist to it. Like when you get to the end of the episode, you're like, whoa, didn't see that coming. And it's a very, I mean, like most things on this list, they're very isolated episodes. The next one is from the TV show Supernatural. I remember this specifically being in season 3. Obviously I don't remember the episode. Basically it's a circumstance where Sam is stuck in a time loop where basically each and every day he has to watch his brother Dean die. And it's such a long time ago that I'll go ahead and spoil it and just talk about it because it's kind of interesting. Is that basically Sam was put in this time loop by, at the time they thought he was a trickster, but later on they find out that it's the angel Gabriel pretending to be a trickster. And basically the entire episode is meant to be a lesson for Sam in a sense of like, it's around the time like there's that whole Lilith deal that the moment like Dean dies, he has a limited amount of time and he's gonna die and get dragged to hell. And Gabriel's whole point was to kind of teach Sam like, no matter what you do, you can't save your brother. He's gonna die and he's gonna go to hell, and this is just getting Sam prepared. So at the time it's like, oh, it's super messed up, but I guess like considering his whole situation, you kind of understand slightly why he was doing it, because I think it wasn't just to torture Sam, it's because he actually liked Sam, but he wanted Sam to kind of learn that lesson, you know, because like obviously like he'd have to I mean it's super messed up because over and over again he had to basically watch his brother die all these different ways. No matter what he did, his brother would ultimately die at the end of the day, restart the next day. And so it's kind of like obviously a little levity to it, but ultimately it's a very messed up Groundhog's Day time loop type of situation. Next on the list is one I'm not 100% familiar, I don't remember as well, is 12 Monkeys. I don't remember the exact circumstances around it. Their situation is a little different. It's kind of unique in its regard because it's a time loop within time travel, because basically Cole and Cassie ended up going back in time and they end up getting trapped in this like time loop in that time period, which is kind of interesting. I just don't remember the exact circumstances. I do remember Jennifer being involved in it, but I don't remember the exact circumstances, so I do apologize about that. So I can't really give too much details because I'm pretty sure it was season 2 when that happened, right? I mean, to be fair with 12 Monkeys, there's a lot more occasions of like time loop type of situations, but this one's specifically the most like Groundhog's Day type of situation, so to kind of separate it from the rest of the show, because like Legends of Tomorrow, it is a time travel show, except like I said, what makes it unique is with like Legends' whole situation, it's like the Wave Rider was in the middle of the time stream. It wasn't in any particular time period. It's kind of in like the flow of time, whereas in this particular case, like I said, they were literally time travel to a point in time, and they were constantly stuck in repeating that day over and over. And the final one I have on my list is from the TV show Travelers. In fact, season 2, there's kind of a time loop Groundhog's Day situation, and it's very unique in its execution too, because it isn't like it is kind of like, oh, like there's a lesson to be learned, but it's more like basically this thing happens. I'll try not to spoil it because, you know, season 2 fairly recently came out. It came out like a couple months ago, so I won't spoil it too much. But basically, it involves, it's an episode that doesn't involve the main characters of the show to a huge extent. They play a role in the episode, but just like the way the episode is structured, it's actually told more so from the time loop perspective rather than the main protagonist's perspective of just like trying to go back. Like it's going, like the time loop in the sense of Travelers, it's like someone's going back in time. Travelers are constantly going back to this particular point in time trying to change things, and it's just a very unique Groundhog's Day time loop type of situation all on its own because of its execution. And it isn't more of a moral lesson that's learned. It's supposed to be like a, oh, we screwed up this time, let's go back, you know, even further in this day at some point in time to kind of try and make sure that this event that goes down doesn't happen. I know I'm kind of talking in circles around it, but it's like if you have not seen Travelers, you should really watch that. But in particular, I think it's such a fascinating episode because I think there's no other episode like it so far in the show, and I think that's what makes it kind of really stand out because it's so unique. Even like I said, amongst the whole Groundhog's Day time loop type of situation, but also amongst the show itself. It's kind of a very unique way to use time travel in a time loop Groundhog's Day type of way. Because it's like, oh, we screwed up here. Well, let's go. Let's kind of try that again with this whole time travel situation. Oh, we screwed up here again. Well, let's try to go back again and again and again. A trial and error type of thing. So it's not like they're stuck in this time loop particularly, it's like they create the time loop Groundhog's Day situation themselves. That's what I'm trying to get at. Really, those are just some of the ones I'm listing off that that come to mind. I'm sure there's a lot more that I've either experienced or I'm aware of. My question to you is, what are some of your favorite Groundhog Day / time loop, you know, episodes kind of like that? Do you care for do you care for that as an episode arc in TV shows, or are you just kind of like, you know, like, no, I've seen it enough times, I'm sick of it? Or are you just kind of like, no, I'm always interested to see what TV shows kind of put their own little twist to it, which, you know, I mean, because it kind of just fits with the whole genre itself because it's like time travel. You've seen a lot of people do time travel, but, you know, it's always interesting to see other people's kind of take on time travel. So it's that same concept. So just let me know all your thoughts in the comments down below. Really, that's all I'm going to talk about in this video. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and good